we were putting together this panel, and Naval and me were thinking what should be the topic. One or two or three key things came into our mind on what is happening to the media industry at large and radio in particular. And we thought that picking up radio versus another medium or radio versus an advertising option could be a good bet, primarily because of what may happen with television and the ratings blackout in the next next 1 or 2 months, or the way the 10+2 has played out on television over the last 6 months, or how measurement is actually playing havoc to the print guys. So, so with all of this happening in the world around us, I think we are in a safe island. And let me start with Prashant. He's a dear colleague from the radio industry and the business. So Prashant, tell us, what do you think about where is radio advertising going in the mind of the advertiser today?
My own experience, can you hear? Hello? Is it going through? Yeah. My own experience in the last few years, especially the last 3 or 4 years, has been that clients have truly started using radio in the right way that they should. There was a time in the past when radio was considered to be just another medium, and it was bought for inventory and bought at typically valued in that particular way, as we used to all joke about, by the kilo, and used. But off late, what I've realized is, and I think the radio industry has really pushed it that way, is to use radio creatively. And I find that in addition to digital, radio is probably the only medium where creative guys can really freak out. They can let their hair hang loose, not bother about all the stuck-up marketing rules and laws they've defined for their brands, and really have fun. And when they do that, those are the brands that really use radio best, and they are the ones who get the most mileage from radio.
So while you say that, we were in a very interesting discussion some many years ago with Balki. Do you remember that session?
Yes.
And there was a huge argument about how Balki came on to a radio panel. He's a dear friend, and said that radio doesn't excite him, and him and me had a kind of an altercation. I said, yeah, we never shoot radio commercials in Switzerland, right? Why will it ever excite you? So Abhijit, coming from, you and me started our careers together, and I think we've done some interesting work. What do you think about radio as from a creative person's point of view? There is no storyboard and there is no Switzerland, right?
No, see, actually, I've been fortunate enough to have clients who let me record radio spots all over the world. But, that's just our secret, and, we don't tell anyone about that. Having said that, like Prashant said, for a creative person, all you're looking for is a canvas. Now, whether that canvas appears on screen or paper or in the audio-visual medium or digital, it doesn't fuss us so much. There is no doubt that of all the options that is there, radio is the one that provides you with probably the biggest and the widest options of doing something most original, because there is nothing. Whatever you create starts from absolutely nothing. So, even in a print ad, it starts from a piece of paper. Hey, it's just out there. So we really enjoy doing radio at our agency. Some of our clients love utilizing it as a medium. We've been fortunate enough to, in India, to have a culture which is hugely auditory. People enjoy all kinds of auditory simulation, whether it's songs, jingles, narrations, etc. So I think it's a really exciting medium, and at least personally, I try and encourage as many of my kids to have a bash at radio. I try and write a couple of them myself personally every year.
Yeah. So Anisha, coming to you as a client's perspective, right? Radio is supposed to be the theater of mind medium, right? And most advertisers like to believe that they can create real value out of radio. But over a period of time, most advertising agencies actually don't even make radio spots, and a lot of radio stations end up making radio spots. Why do you think clients are leaning towards radio stations versus advertising agencies to create this experience?
So I think what has happened is that the channels are understanding the medium better than agencies. If you go to an agency, the solution that you get is a typical spot, a 30-second spot. Whereas the best use of the medium is when you actually start integrating with the program. And channels have also started offering creative services, So to that extent, what you do tend to take advantage of that. I mean, the recent example that I have where we've actually won in one of the categories, I guess, with your channel, is when we actually integrated with the program. So you know what your RJs are capable of. You know what your programming content is. So typically, you would not give us a radio jingle or the radio spot solutions. And you would give us something which is more meshed up with what your programming can take. And I think that's the best use of the medium.
Yeah. So, Gautam, Prashant, spoke about buying by the kilo, right? So I believe that in my little experience in radio, and Prashant's far more experienced than I am, radio has two problems. One is obviously how much do advertising agencies think of radio while they're thinking of campaigns, and the other is when will media stop buying it by the kilo? What do you have to say?
I think the fundamental problem that I've seen, having worked in an agency and earlier as a client, is that we're trying to make orange juice with apples. I think Prashant talked about the fact, and Naval spoke about the fact, you cannot create radio advertising looking TV forward. I mean, Naval in fact talked, I think it was a Freudian slip when he said the awards that the jury saw. And actually we just heard the awards, I mean the entries. So we are so TV forward in our thinking that we then measure everything by that same yardstick, the same expectation. And what Prashant is saying is absolutely right. There's so much creative talent. A single line brief to a radio station can do so much more in terms of mind-opening creative than otherwise possible. So it's quite sad to see that with so much excitement and so much potential, radio is still just, what, 3% of the market?
5 to 7, yeah, depends on
depending on who you ask. But still,
depends on the market you look at, because radio is not in every geographical,
fair enough, but small. And it could go places if you were to just use it for what the medium is, as opposed to trying to do a TV ad on radio.
Sorry. Coming to you, I mean, so I won't pose the same question because the question is more relevant to you than to him. But FMCG is a category that probably has been far more TV heavy than anything else. But I believe that Unilever and probably Fulcrum are paths breaking in the kind of work that they've done on radio. Prashant, your experience, mine too, across all FMCG platforms, probably Unilever uses radio in the best possible format than anybody else. So give us your thinking, or what does your client and you think when you think of radio and planned radio?
See, so far we've been talking about, what does radio have to offer? But when you look at it from a client's perspective, and especially larger FMCG clients with a huge amount of base, it's obvious that, television becomes the primary choice because it's the highest reach, the cheapest medium, and there is some barrage of experience of, successful television deliveries. So the question then, from a media standpoint, is that what next if TV does your job, And the way to look at it is that what does radio as a medium has to offer from a media standpoint? And what we've kind of, understood so far in our experience is that radio is brilliant at localization. So if you have campaigns or if you have initiatives wherein you want that entire local flavor, to come on board, then radio is something that really helps you to give that. Second thing radio does beautifully is engagement. I think, it's like these days it's not 24/7 many places, but at least 18 hours a day, it can go live. And it kind of brings in, that entire component of engagement 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I think these are, from a media standpoint, these are differentiators which actually bring in the role of the medium far more strongly and have a play. And if you understand, these two tenets of what radio can bring to the table, then, you can do a lot more things, and seep it in terms of your strategy as well.
You're right. Obviously, engagement is one of the key, power to radio kind of platforms. Prashant, there are some categories that are more heavy on radio than the others. Talk us through what categories you think over the next 3 or 4 years, or even next 1 or 2 years, would you like to see on radio, and what can radio do to make itself relevant?
I have a feeling, Tarun, that if people really understand how to use radio, and like I mentioned, it's growing rapidly by the day. Like more and more clients are coming and asking for creative ideas. I think every single category can use it. How they use it will vary. For instance, let's take FMCG. I mean, you're right that television delivers fabulously for FMCG. There's no doubt about it. But every FMCG brand doesn't have the same marketing objective across the country. So radio can chip in beautifully and say, why don't you do this in Rajasthan, do that in Tamil Nadu. So more of that can happen. Telecom, for instance. Telecom is something that uses radio to shift its client base. Traditionally, telecom products were sold to a certain type of customers, and then suddenly we found that telecom companies were targeting the youth, and they're targeting, let's say, people in the semi-urban cities. And suddenly they found that, instead of going to television, it's better to go on radio. Look at retail. Retail is one medium that uses radio probably very, very frequently. Today in the radio industry, I think almost 60% of our revenues are coming from retail clients. And retail clients are very, very demanding. And retail clients don't bother about brand building as much as they bother about getting footfalls on a weekly basis or whatever. Now, what we have realized there is that if you can suggest, we are working with a restaurant chain. I'm just taking an example. And the restaurant chain actually runs full on weekend nights, and certain days, but they don't know how to fill up the restaurant during weekdays and during lunchtime. So we have gone them and suggested ideas to them. Actually, they're marketing solutions, which says, why don't you run this food festival? Why don't you educate people about Chinese food? Why don't you do, those kind of things? So it's that. So I have a feeling, Tarun, that radio doesn't compete with anything. I must tell you this one thing. The sales head of Red FM, Surinder, once made a very good observation that radio is like vodka. It can mix with anything. And more importantly, unlike vodka, you can even listen to it or you can consume it while driving. I think it was a very interesting thing. So every category should be using vodka or radio. And I think going forward, that's going to happen.
So tell me, Anisha, have you tried attempting or thinking how you could use radio with digital or use radio with your television campaigns? And, talk us a little about that.
So I think both radio, which is on the move, one of the medium that works very effectively is the mobile. Because, you carry your mobile in hand. And most people are listening to radio while they are driving, I mean, at least the influencers and the decision makers are. So if somehow, and that's the call to action. So if you attempt to get any radio activity connected with mobile, more than PC or more than television, that works the best. So, you can, and we've tried it out, when you want a consumer response to something. You're getting into a debate on a program with an RJ, and you're saying something about the brand. You can just get the people to participate through an SMS. Thing. So I think that's the best use that you can do of integrating digital with radio.
And so I think WhatsApp, and we've tried doing this in one of our Bangalore stations, is actually, we've got one of the largest groups in Bangalore on WhatsApp. So we've created a WhatsApp number, and the RJ goes out and asks everybody to join the WhatsApp group, and it's become an engagement platform, and it's got like thousands of people on that one group. One wouldn't think that WhatsApp is going to be a platform for mass engagement. It's a one-on-one or a small group kind of thing, but radio's actually created one of the largest WhatsApp groups If
I may add to that, Tarun, what we have noticed is that, doing digital by itself. And I say digital is very skewed towards search and towards a certain YouTube and a few properties really. But, actual digital, the advertising part of it is pretty lackluster. But what we found is that if you do an activity on digital, let's say a music festival, or you're doing something on your online streams, and then use radio to really pump it up, and that works like wonders.
Correct. Yeah. So, Abhijit, tell me, while you guys think creative and O&M, and I've worked in O&M for many years to know how focused they are even on radio creatives, but when you see advertisers move out and not do radio creatives through you, why do you think that happens?
So, honestly, we haven't come across too many such cases. I think the trick is in trying to find, like Anisha mentioned, I think many a times what happens is we have some thoughts which we think might not be possible. Later on, we sort of hear that, no, actually the radio station did make it possible. I think one of the ways in which I think things can improve is a little bit of more dialogue between radio stations and the creative departments as well as the clients about the possibilities that can happen. I think what makes radio more exciting than just doing spots is doing interesting kinds of programming. Okay, whether it's integrating it into an existing format or coming up with certain ideas. Right now, for the launch of one of both Gotham's and our biggest clients, we've got a very interesting innovation option, which I think both Prashant and you can pitch for, but because it will be interesting. but I think education towards the creative guys about the possibilities that are there and the sense of openness, I think will really help. I'll tell you one big advantage I think radio has. On television, if you see some program or if it has overt branding, it's intrusive.
Correct.
I think radio has the advantage that you can slip in the brand.
Yeah.
It won't be intrusive. It won't spoil the flavor of the show. Yet it will achieve the objective that you want. I think that's a big trick that a lot of advertisers are missing on. This is, I think, one of my favorite programs is on your channel, what Nilesh does.
Yeah.
Yad Share. I'm just thinking, tomorrow he tells you stories.
Yeah,
and beach mein you just
he's
bung
done a
in.
beautiful one with Hero Bikes recently.
Yeah, so you just slip it in. I think that's the magic that only radio
It's
offers
very
and
difficult to
nobody
get
else
talent
does.
like that to do stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think it is. But I think that's the magic that
Yeah,
radio has.
I agree with you. Yeah.
It's interesting what, is this working now? So it's interesting what Kinu was saying, because I was saying to Bharat offline that one of the things we learned about advertising very young was if you can, this was for the launch of Tide in India, and what we were told is if you can show whiteness on radio, you don't need a TV spot. Because what you imagine whiteness to be in your mind, having heard a radio spot, is unbeatable. You cannot do a side-by-side comparison. And that's what you've got to use radio for. Now, unfortunately, and I think we are all collectively to blame for this, there aren't enough strong case studies being pushed out there, especially to clients. Take it, I mean, the fact of the matter is, correct, the fact of the matter is radio content today is so undifferentiated relative to, say, television or print content, that, frankly, if you ask me what radio station am I listening to, I don't have a channel logo to go by, right? And if I don't listen to it long enough, I won't hear the promo for the station. So how do you even tell that there's a difference between A, B, and C? That's very difficult.
Yeah. Radio is used like a tactical medium rather than like a strategic medium. So today, if you ask, you plan our media for us, there would be a television and there would be a digital, which has started playing a strategic role. But radio still plays a very tactical role. So there might be one activity, one event, that you feel that, you have to push in a certain market and you would use radio. I think it's important that radio becomes a strategic medium. And with budgets becoming limited and the share of the pie, widening with more options available to planners.
So I think, let's bring Amin into this, because we've done a lot of work with Unilever over the last few years, and all of that is in the strategic range, not in the tactical range. Strategic stroke engagement, but engagement for strategic regions, not for pure advertising or tactical reasons. How does Unilever look at radio? Is it tactical? Is it strategic? Is it, objective-led, long-term objective-led?
Yeah, I think we kind of have a tick mark. Thankfully, actually, we've got examples wherein radio becomes a part across all three. From October, 2012, we've done some studies, and there was this entire drive about pushing up, the non-TV agenda for Unilever, and wherein print and radio actually have ended up playing a very big role. So today we have a body of work done across categories, across brands, wherein you have case studies which has actually translated into, brand results.
Like we revived Close Up Antakshari with them across UP markets in very, very small markets with Manoj Tiwari, and built another new engagement platform for year-round engagement. Sorry.
So I think that's a classic example of real, in a real term, how can a sponsorship, really translate and deliver as a sponsorship. Generally, currently, the norm is that you take a sponsorship, you run tags on it, and you keep running tags on it. At best, it does saliency for the brand. But in this case, and there was an entire research which was put in behind, a separate research which was actually put in only to understand how is this entire property, delivering for the end consumer and for the brand Close Up, and the results are unbelievable. The mind measures shift that we've seen, it's a case study in itself. And today the conversations are how can we roll this up, and if you've delivered that in a market like UP, which is a very highly challenging market, to move any mind measures, with your biggest of the campaigns, how can you then replicate this entire case study elsewhere? The other big, learning is the power of the RJ. Today with RJs talking to their viewers, to the listeners for almost, at least 2 to 3 hours a day. Every station has at least 2 or 3 prominent RJs talking to their listeners. You multiply that number with the number of stations that are available in the country, and you have, an entire pile of advocates, brand advocates available at your disposal. Of course, some of the RJs have started, thinking that they are brand in itself and all of that, and that's a separate conversation. But other than that, I think there's a potential milestone, which can really help leverage, and they are brand in themselves, they're advocates of your brands. I distinctly remember some of the initiatives which, some of the brands did, and they are your brands. And they did some years back with Jaggu and Tarana, and they still resonate. And the beautifully, the way they crafted this entire brand, over 6 to 8 weeks time, and some of the initiatives over some months. Some of the initiatives, I think Jaggu took on this entire Saffola trick to weight loss thing, and it was so beautiful, and I'm sure that, the brand would have come back, wanting for more. I think these are case studies which will stay with us.
So Prashant, so that's the creative side of it. What do you think is the role of measurement to move more categories into radio?
So, I think the first thing is that the day, what does overemphasis on measurement lead to? It leads to buying in by the kilos. I think we need to change. The one thing that we have failed as an industry, and I must point this out, is that we have not been able to develop a relevant metric. The relevant metric has to take into account the fact that it is an engagement medium, that it is a medium by which you can create innovative opportunities for brands, and how do you therefore measure that? So that's something that we need to do some work on. But even talking about...
But having said that, for a radio station in Delhi which reaches 60 lakh people weekly, any average radio station and a best publication would reach what?
15, 20 lakhs.
Right? The usage is still very, very varied, right?
Yeah, no, but again, the usage by advertisers. Yeah, so again, the whole idea is that even today, I feel, leave aside the fact that we need to create a new metric. Park that aside for a moment. Look at conventional data that's available. Again, it's our failing as an industry. I'll give an example. If you go to the UK and you've seen all the work that Rejar has done over there, so you have mathematical models available which says that if you add so much of radio to so much of newspapers, or add so much of radio to so much of television, here is what you can expect. I've been talking to clients and telling them that next time you're planning a campaign, choose a few markets without radio, choose a few markets with radio. We'll give you the radio gratis, but share the results with us. So we can develop a body of results, which can then be used as a template across the market. So I think that's what I think we should do as a radio industry, to go and talk to more clients and make this.
Personally, yeah, so what do you think? Yeah, Gautam, I was just coming.
Is this thing working now?
Yeah, it is.
Excellent. So personally, I think
I think, you may want to speak louder. The mics are okay.
They are?
Trust
okay.
me.
Excellent.
See, you have a golden band there.
So I think going down this measurement route might not necessarily be the best thing to do. I mean, look at it very simply. I think we talked about the fact that creative is really important. And if radios take our pick between 3 and 5 and 7% of the total spend, and for some FMCG clients, maybe under 3% of spend, nobody is going to lose their job by being extra creative on radio as a spender. If they try to fool around with television, which is 85% of the budget, they might lose their job. But radio, I think we should go wild and just lead with ideas. That's the only way to do it. And coming back to the point I made earlier, we're not seeing enough case studies being pushed out. Why doesn't someone package the winners at Golden Mics and take them to leading advertisers and say, this is what we've done?
Yeah. I think I have a little slightly different point of view. I think measurement, without mincing words, highly critical. We as an industry have a very live example that if there is measurement, the entire upside for the industry at large over a longer period of time is far higher than for those who don't have measurement.
I agree.
Some of the challenges that radio currently is facing is because you have one metric of measurement for 4 markets. Then you have another metric which comes, for the extended 9 markets. Then that 9 became 13. But for everything else, you have to go back to one thing called as IRS. Then you want to say that, okay, now I want to work out a media multiplier. I mean, India as a market is already struggling wherein there is no single source data. I am not talking about 3 to 5% ad spends. In that sense, digital, unfortunately, for radio, has already taken over, radio. Why? Primarily because, I mean, one of the key reasons is because it's the highest accountable medium. If tomorrow radio really wants to play a bigger game, I think measurement is the way to move
But
forward.
Prashant, you know, the fact is that even in the 4 metros that we do have measurement, we've all seen volumes go up significantly over the last 2 or 3 years. And,
Yeah,
and,
but Tarun, before
and maybe we've not done as a good job of evangelizing the current data, like you said, and using it effectively across, you know, to more advertisers than we currently have. But volumes today across radio stations in these 4 markets would be probably 100% through the year.
Yeah, absolutely. But Tarun, if I may just respond to what Amin said, you know, digital is a medium that everyone loves, and rightly so. But just for a moment, pause and think that except for search, and I understand, I completely believe that search is a results-driven business because you only pay when somebody's actually clicked on a link that you provided over there. But look, go back to your personal experience and actually check this out, that when you're on a website or when you're even on a YouTube or whatever, how many times do you actually have the patience or even the bandwidth speed, if I may say so, to actually look at a pop-up? I find myself competing with that damn pop-up to switch it before it turns on, comes on. So, you know, what I'm saying is partly digital should not be confused with search. Search I'm willing to buy, but apart from search, digital needs to be calibrated as well.
Anisha, you wanted to come into that one.
I think measurability for radio, first of all, is important. Like I said, it will continue to stay a tactical medium and not become strategic if there is no accountability of the medium available. And that's, I think, its biggest drawback. And that's why we continue to use it on a need-to-need basis or a case-to-case basis and not on a running basis, you know. You might have created one property that, you know, it's become your property and you want to sustain it like the close-up and Takshri or something. But otherwise, most clients are still using it like a tactical medium only because measurability is not there.
So
having said that, the digital medium measurability, beyond search, I think with e-commerce opening up on digital, there is a real case of selling your product and then taking them to the site and the destination site for converting. So that we've seen results coming in now. My category was not selling online, okay? The e-commerce was not open. The minute we opened e-commerce, the advertisement preceding it to actually explain what the whole category is, you know, to create the need and take them to the destination has started working. So wherever you see that there is a closure mechanism available, the advertisement is working. Otherwise, it is, you are absolutely right.
So the route, sorry Tarun, so the route is, in your case, you have developed is via the e-commerce route.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But I'm saying most people, when they talk of digital, are still talking banners and pre-rolls and spending thousands, like you said, it's already gone past radio. Very true. Spending literally thousands of crores on that. I'm saying that somewhere a word of caution is required.
No, but see, social media getting monetized with Facebook charging you for coming on the wall, on your
trust me,
wall.
Anisha, you know the experience on social media. What can you do with that little space that you have?
You know, anyway, so I think let's not give more time to digital than it requires on a radio panel. So one last, before we wrap up and before Naval throws me out of here, one last wish you have from the radio industry or the radio business in the next 1 year before we meet again next year. Anisha.
I think accountability and some bit of integration.
Some bit of integration.
Especially with, you know, channels like digital and all. The two
Correct.
need to work in tandem, and it's a beautiful medium.
I would say differentiate content and showcase.
Yeah. So I think evangelism is one big need.
Yeah, I mean, we are doing enough, but to do more, I think measurement again. I also want to bring in differentiating content. I think it's done very well for you. I am hoping that other channels will follow suit. And, you know, I mean, bring in a lot more distinct content, and we'll have a lot more better listening times.
Kinu.
See, as a creative person, you know, I'm only interested in measurement and nothing else.
I didn't bring you into this conversation at all. If you didn't notice, and I could see the almost the disdain on your face.
Measurement, matrix, research, etc., etc. You know, things like.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, on a serious note, but I would think openness to experiment, and also I think the willingness on the client side to put money into radio production. I think that's critical.
I think so too.
So what happens? Because I'll tell you what happens. It is a tough medium, it's an exciting medium, but it takes a special talent. You have to respect the talent. But if you say, you know, actually I only have now the $100 left, see the best you can do, you'll never see the magic which radio is capable of doing.
And I think the radio stations, while they make a lot of creatives for a lot of clients, are at guilt to actually use poor voices to do free production and things like that. And I think Kino's made a very, very fair point to that, yeah. Prashant.
One simple thing is that the creative guys and the creative agency should get fully involved with radio.
Correct.
Because, you know, I think radio is like jazz, and we've all discussed it. You can do whatever you want to do with it. But if it is relegated to the last bit where the last bits of money are spent, then, you know, nobody benefits. The client doesn't benefit either.
So thank you so much. Thank you. They've been a great panel, and you've been a great audience.